Stop scrolling, because most people don't live with their eyes open. They walk into rooms and miss the truth. They hear words and miss the lies. They smile, they agree, they trust, and then they wonder why they get manipulated, misunderstood, replaced. You are not weak. You're just untrained. In this video, I'm going to unlock the silent power that spies, negotiators, detectives, and top leaders use every day. Observation, the skill that lets you read people without arguing. The skill that helps you protect your peace, choose the right people, and stop being fooled by noise. And while you learn it, your English will sharpen too. Sentence flow, listening, and real-life rhythm. If you're ready to stop being blind, comment one right now. Let's begin. Most people move through life believing that truth is spoken. They think honesty lives in sentences, that meaning is carried by words, that if someone smiles, agrees, or explains enough, then what they say must be real. But that belief is exactly why so many people are confused, betrayed, and emotionally exhausted. The truth is not loud. It is rarely announced. It doesn't sit inside beautiful sentences or convincing apologies. Truth lives in behavior, in pauses, in tiny cracks between what is shown and what is felt. And the moment you realize this, your entire way of seeing people begins to change. Imagine a quiet, ordinary scene. Nothing dramatic. No arguments. No raised voices. Just a human moment that most people would pass without noticing. A man sitting calmly, responding with polite gestures, appearing present. To the surface eye, everything looks normal, even warm. But when you slow down and truly observe, something feels off. The smile doesn't last. The body betrays tension. The eyes carry weight that words never touch. And suddenly, you understand something without anyone explaining it to you. What you are witnessing is not what is actually happening. While others see harmony, the observer senses conflict. While others see calm, the observer notices pain preparing to surface. This is the exact point where observation becomes power. Not because you are smarter, louder, or more dominant, but because you are no longer fooled by appearances. You stop asking, "What did they say?" and start asking, "What did they show?" You realize that people can rehearse sentences, control tone, and polish explanations, but they struggle to control the unconscious signals their body releases under pressure. A twitch, a hesitation, a breath held too long, these are not accidents. They are emotional fingerprints. Words are often performances. Behavior is rarely rehearsed. That is the rule most people never learn. They listen with trust instead of awareness. They hear reassurance and ignore contradiction. They accept politeness as honesty and confidence as strength. But the observer sees deeper. The observer understands that truth doesn't argue for attention. It leaks quietly through discomfort, timing, and subtle imbalance. This realization is not about becoming suspicious or cynical. It is about becoming accurate. You don't need to accuse anyone. You don't need to confront or expose. Observation is silent. It simply gives you clarity. It teaches you that reality speaks constantly, even when mouths are quiet. And once you experience this shift, you can never return to seeing people the same way again. Because from that moment on, you no longer listen only to what is said. You begin to read what is real. Once you understand that truth lives beyond words, something inside you shifts. You stop rushing to respond. You stop needing to explain yourself. And slowly, almost without effort, you begin to notice how loud the world really is. Everyone is speaking. Everyone is proving. Everyone is defending an image. Yet very few are actually paying attention. This is where the real separation begins, not between smart and foolish, but between those who react and those who observe. The crowd lives on the surface. It moves fast, talks fast, judges fast. Opinions are formed in seconds. Emotions explode without warning, and decisions are made before understanding has a chance to breathe. But the wise move differently. They don't hurry to be heard. They enter a room and feel its temperature before opening their mouth. They watch who interrupts, who avoids eye contact, who mirrors confidence, and who hides behind noise. While others compete for attention, the observer collects information. Observation is often mistaken for passivity, but it is the opposite. It is active awareness, without emotional interference. When you observe, you gain access to details that impulsive minds miss. You see the shift in posture when a certain name is mentioned. You sense resistance behind agreement. You notice when energy drops or tension rises, even when the conversation sounds smooth. These small details form a map, and those who can read the map rarely get lost. There is a reason leaders, strategists, and emotionally intelligent individuals speak less and watch more. Talking too much anchors you to your own perspective. Observation frees you from it. When you are silent, you are not empty, you are open. People reveal themselves when they believe no one is watching closely. They relax their masks, they expose their habits, they repeat their patterns. The observer doesn't chase truth. This is how observation becomes an advantage rather than a skill. While others react emotionally, you remain grounded. While others defend their ego, you protect your clarity. You don't need to win every conversation. You don't need to dominate. You understand that power doesn't come from control. It comes from comprehension. And comprehension is built quietly. Over time, this way of seeing changes how you move through the world. You become harder to manipulate, not because you distrust everyone, but because you recognize inconsistency early. You make better choices in people, partnerships, and opportunities. You stop wasting energy on situations that were never aligned. And perhaps most importantly, you begin to feel calm in places that used to make you anxious. This is the invisible line between the crowd and the wise. One reacts to what appears. The other watches for what repeats. One speaks to be seen. The other sees before speaking. And once you step onto the side of observation, you don't just understand people better, you start living with intention rather than impulse. As observation sharpens your awareness, another truth becomes impossible to ignore. The more people talk, the more they give themselves away. Silence, once misunderstood as emptiness, begins to reveal itself as strength. In a world addicted to expression, restraint becomes rare, and what is rare becomes powerful. This is where observation deepens into influence not through dominance, but through presence. Most people speak to release tension. They explain, justify, interrupt, and overshare because silence makes them uncomfortable. They feel the urge to fill every pause, to prove their value, to control how they are perceived. But in doing so, they expose their fears, their insecurities, and their intentions. The observer notices this pattern and chooses a different path. They allow silence to exist. They let conversations breathe, and in that space, others reveal far more than they ever intended. When you talk less, something subtle happens. People begin to talk more. They elaborate. They clarify. They repeat themselves. They project their thoughts into the quiet you leave behind. Silence acts like a mirror. It reflects what others bring into it. While they speak, you watch how they structure their thoughts, what they emphasize, what they avoid, and how their emotions leak through their words. You gain information without asking for it. This is not about being cold or distant. It is about being selective. Words are tools, and powerful people use tools with intention. They don't waste them. They understand that every sentence reveals a position, every reaction exposes a boundary, and every explanation gives away leverage. By speaking less, you remain undefined. By remaining undefined, you stay unpredictable. And unpredictability commands attention without effort. Silence also protects you. It prevents you from reacting emotionally, from committing to opinions too early, from revealing your hand before the game is clear. While others rush to respond, you gain time, and time creates perspective. Perspective creates control. This is why calm individuals often appear confident, even when they say very little. Their restraint signals that they are not desperate for validation. They are comfortable waiting, and people instinctively respect those who are not in a hurry to be understood. In conversations, silence changes the balance of power. The one who speaks constantly seeks approval. The one who listens deeply evaluates. When you pause before responding, you shift the dynamic. You move from participant to observer, from reactor to chooser. You decide when to engage and when to step back. This alone can transform negotiations, relationships, and conflicts without a single argument. Over time, speaking less reshapes how others experience you. They sense depth where there is restraint. They feel weight behind your words because you don't scatter them carelessly. When you do speak, people listen not because you demand attention, but because you've trained them to value your silence. And in that quiet authority, you gain something most never realize exists. You gain control without force. You gain insight without confrontation. You gain respect without asking for it. Because in a world where everyone is trying to be heard, the one who chooses to observe becomes the one who understands. When you learn to speak less and observe more, a new layer of reality begins to surface. Silence clears the noise, and in that clarity, you start seeing something most people miss entirely. You realize that very few individuals show their true selves directly. Instead, they perform. They present versions of themselves designed to be accepted, admired, feared, or trusted. These versions are not lies in the traditional sense, but they are not the whole truth either. They are masks, carefully shaped for the room they are in. Most social interaction happens at this surface level. People respond to confidence, charm, humor, politeness. They interact with roles, titles, and images. But observers don't stop there. They notice the difference between what someone displays and what they carry inside. They sense when confidence feels forced, when kindness feels strategic, when silence feels heavy rather than peaceful. Behind every mask is an emotion trying to protect itself, and once you learn to see that, people become far more understandable. A smile, for example, can mean many things. It can signal warmth, but it can also hide discomfort. Arrogance may look like strength, yet often shields insecurity. Excessive friendliness can be a bridge or a distraction. The observer doesn't label these behaviors as good or bad. They simply recognize them as signals. They understand that behavior is rarely random. It is adaptive. People adjust their presentation to survive socially, emotionally, and psychologically. This ability to see beyond appearances changes how you relate to others. You stop taking things personally. When someone reacts aggressively, you don't immediately see an enemy. You see fear trying to defend itself. When someone seeks constant attention, you don't see confidence. You see a need to be validated. This perspective doesn't make you naive. It makes you precise. Seeing past masks also protects you. It helps you recognize manipulation early, before words turn into promises and promises turn into disappointments. You notice when someone's actions don't match their image. You catch the subtle inconsistency between what they say they value and how they actually behave. And instead of confronting or exposing, you quietly adjust your expectations. You step back. You choose distance. Awareness becomes your boundary. Over time, this skill reshapes your emotional world. You stop being pulled into drama that was never meant for you. You stop trying to save people who are only acting strong. You stop trusting images more than patterns. And in doing so, you gain a calm confidence that doesn't need to prove itself. You know what you're seeing, even when others don't. This is the quiet advantage of observation. You are no longer hypnotized by presentation. You are grounded in perception. You understand that everyone wears a mask at times, including you. But you also know that masks slip, and when they do, the observer is already watching. You don't need to unmask people aggressively. You don't need to expose or confront. You simply see. And because you see, you choose wisely. That is how observation turns confusion into clarity and interaction into understanding. Once you begin to see beyond masks and appearances, observation evolves into something deeper. It stops being just a way to read others and becomes a form of emotional intelligence. Not the kind measured by tests or labels, but the kind that allows you to sense what is happening beneath the surface before it turns into conflict, loss, or regret. This is where observation becomes guidance. Most people think emotional intelligence means managing emotions after they appear. They focus on controlling anger once it explodes, or fixing misunderstandings after damage is done. Observers work differently. They notice emotions while they are still forming. They sense tension before it becomes an argument. They feel distance before it turns into betrayal. They recognize discomfort before it hardens into resentment. This early awareness gives them time, and time, in human interaction, is everything. When you observe closely, emotions stop being confusing. You begin to recognize patterns in how people express stress, fear, excitement, or insecurity. A slight change in tone, a shift in posture, a hesitation where confidence used to live. These are not dramatic signals, but they are consistent. And once you learn to read them, you no longer need explanations. You understand what someone is experiencing, even if they don't fully understand it themselves. This kind of intelligence doesn't require confrontation. In fact, it often avoids it. Instead of reacting emotionally, you adjust your response. You soften your tone. You give space. You change direction. Or you quietly step back. You are no longer driven by impulse. You are guided by awareness. And that awareness protects you from being pulled into emotional chaos that isn't yours to carry. Observation also sharpens your intuition. Not intuition as guesswork, but intuition as accumulated perception. The more you observe human behavior, the more accurately you predict outcomes. You sense when a situation will turn unhealthy. You recognize when trust is weakening. You feel when someone is no longer aligned with you, even before words confirm it. This is not negativity. It is clarity. With this clarity, your relationships change. You listen more deeply. You respond more intentionally. You stop trying to convince, fix, or save people who are not ready. You choose conversations that matter and let go of those that drain you. Emotional intelligence, at its core, is knowing where to invest your energy and where to withdraw it. Perhaps the greatest shift happens internally. As you observe others with understanding, you begin to observe yourself with honesty. You notice your own emotional triggers. You recognize when you're reacting from past wounds rather than present reality. And instead of judging yourself, you adjust. You breathe. You regain balance. This is self-mastery. Observation doesn't make you cold. It makes you calm. It doesn't make you distant. It makes you grounded. You stop being ruled by emotions because you understand them. And in that understanding, you move through life with steadiness rather than struggle. That is emotional intelligence in its most powerful form, not loud, not dramatic, but quietly transformative. As emotional intelligence settles in, another shift follows naturally. You begin to notice how often reactions, not situations, create chaos. Most conflicts are not born from what happens, but from how quickly people respond without understanding. Observation slows that process down. It creates a gap between stimulus and response, and inside that gap, wisdom lives. The average person reacts first and thinks later. A comment triggers anger. A message triggers anxiety. A delay triggers insecurity. Emotions rise instantly, and actions follow without pause. Words are sent, bridges are burned, and decisions are made in moments that cannot be taken back. Observers move differently. They don't deny emotion, but they don't let it drive the wheel. They watch it rise, recognize it, and choose when and how to act. This is where observation transforms into control, not control over others, but control over yourself. When you pause instead of reacting, you gain perspective. You ask, what is really happening here? Rather than, how do I feel right now? That simple shift changes outcomes. It turns arguments into conversations. It turns confusion into clarity. It turns impulsive mistakes into deliberate choices. Wisdom is not intelligence. It is timing. It is knowing when to speak and when to stay silent, when to step forward and when to step away. Observers understand this deeply. They don't rush to defend their ego. They don't need to win every exchange. They understand that not every reaction deserves expression, and not every emotion requires action. Sometimes the strongest move is stillness. When you stop reacting automatically, you also stop being predictable. People can manipulate reactions. They cannot easily manipulate restraint. Emotional triggers lose their power when you no longer respond on command. This is why calm individuals often seem unshakable. They are not numb. They are selective. They choose responses that serve their long-term well-being, not their short-term emotion. Over time, this approach reshapes how you experience pressure. Stressful moments no longer overwhelm you. You feel them, but you don't drown in them. You observe the situation, the people involved, and your own internal state before acting. This layered awareness allows you to move with intention. You become strategic without being cold, decisive without being harsh. Wisdom also changes how others relate to you. People sense when you are not easily provoked. They become more careful with their words. They listen more closely when you speak. Not because you demand respect, but because your presence communicates stability. You don't add fuel to chaos. You don't mirror dysfunction. You become a grounding force. This is the quiet power of observation in action. Reaction traps you in the moment. Wisdom frees you from it. And that freedom allows you to choose paths that align with who you are becoming, not who you were triggered to be. You don't need to control the world. You only need to control your response to it. And when observation guides your response, life stops feeling like a series of emotional fires to put out. It becomes a sequence of choices, clear, calm, and deliberate. As your reactions soften and wisdom takes the lead, something subtle begins to change around you. You may not notice it at first, but others do. Conversations feel different. People pause when you speak. They listen more closely. Not because you became louder or more dominant, but because your presence carries weight. Observation doesn't just change how you see the world. It changes how the world experiences you. Most people try to earn respect through performance. They talk more, explain more, exaggerate more. They believe visibility creates value, but observation works in the opposite direction. When you speak less and choose your moments carefully, your words stop sounding ordinary. They feel intentional, measured, necessary. People sense that you are not reacting, you are responding. And that difference is powerful. There is a quiet authority that comes from awareness. When you observe before you speak, you avoid saying things you don't mean. You avoid emotional leakage. You avoid unnecessary conflict. Over time, people learn that when you do speak, it matters. You are not filling space. You are shaping it. This makes others more attentive, even without realizing why. Observation also makes you harder to read, and in human interaction, that creates respect. Predictable people are easy to influence. Reactive people are easy to control. But when your behavior is calm, consistent, and intentional, others cannot easily anticipate your moves. This doesn't make you distant, it makes you grounded. And grounding creates a sense of stability that people naturally trust. You may notice that people open up to you more. When someone feels seen without being judged, they relax. They reveal more. They speak honestly. Observation turns you into a mirror rather than a spotlight, and mirrors invite truth. This shift affects every environment you enter. In meetings, you are no longer competing for attention. You are absorbing information. In relationships, you stop over-explaining yourself. You let consistency speak. In conflict, you don't escalate. You de-escalate by not adding emotional fuel. These choices quietly elevate how others perceive you. Respect doesn't come from intimidation. It comes from clarity. People respect those who are centered, those who are not easily shaken, those who don't chase approval. Observation gives you that center. It removes desperation from your behavior. And desperation, more than anything else, is what erodes respect. You don't need to announce your awareness. You don't need to prove your intelligence. Your calm does it for you. And as this presence grows, you'll realize something important. Influence doesn't always look like control. Sometimes it looks like stillness. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like a person who understands far more than they reveal. That is how observation reshapes your image without effort. You don't demand respect. You attract it quietly, naturally, and consistently. As others begin to sense your presence differently, one final truth becomes clear. Observation is not a trick you turn on and off. It is not a technique used only in conversations or moments of tension. It is a way of moving through life, a posture of awareness, a quiet commitment to seeing reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. Many people look for shortcuts. They want tools that promise instant control, quick advantage, or psychological dominance. But observation offers something far more sustainable. It asks for patience instead of speed, consistency instead of intensity. You don't observe to manipulate. You observe to understand. And understanding, when practiced daily, becomes mastery. When observation becomes a lifestyle, you stop forcing outcomes. You stop chasing validation. You let situations reveal themselves over time. You notice patterns instead of isolated moments. You trust behavior more than promises. This doesn't make you passive. It makes you aligned. You act when action is necessary, and you wait when waiting is wiser. This balance is what separates awareness from obsession. Living this way also reshapes your internal world. You are less reactive, less anxious, less consumed by speculation. Your mind becomes quieter because it is no longer fighting reality. You see what is happening, accept it, and choose your response without drama. Observation removes the need to control everything because it gives you clarity about what actually matters. This lifestyle sharpens your judgment without hardening your heart. You remain compassionate but not naive. You care, but you are not easily entangled. You understand people's limitations without excusing harmful behavior. And when something no longer aligns with your values, you step away calmly instead of clinging emotionally. Observation teaches you when to stay and when to leave. Over time, this way of seeing becomes second nature. You don't analyze every detail consciously. You simply feel when something is right or wrong. Your decisions feel grounded. Your boundaries feel natural. You no longer need to explain your choices to everyone because you trust your perception. That trust is built through countless moments of quiet noticing. This is not about being detached from life. It is about being deeply present within it. You don't rush. You don't assume. You don't react blindly. You observe, you understand, and then you move with intention. Observation becomes the lens through which you experience relationships, work, challenges, and opportunities. And in that lens, life feels clearer. Not easier, but clearer. Not louder, but deeper. This is the final evolution of observation. Not as a skill you practice, but as a way you live. And once it becomes part of you, you no longer search for power. You carry it quietly, steadily, and without effort. So now you understand what most people never see. The world isn't confusing because it's complex. It's confusing because people don't slow down long enough to observe. You've learned how truth hides behind behavior, silence, patterns, and timing, how awareness protects you from being misled, how calm attention turns into clarity, respect, and quiet strength. This isn't about judging others. It's about protecting your peace and choosing wisely. From this moment on, speak less, watch more, trust what people show you, not just what they say. If this changed how you see people even slightly, subscribe to this channel. Here, we don't chase motivation. We build awareness, intelligence, and real English through transformation. Share this with someone who needs clarity. And remember, in a noisy world, the one who observes always sees first.